Hello, my name is Aidan Tremethick and this is my presentation on STEAM's inquiry in early childhood education. Today I'll be presenting a schematic representation of how STEAM's approach can be used to design an integrated classroom inquiry in the early years and critically how that learning can be assessed and evaluated in a meaningful, authentic and pedagogically sound way. For this presentation, I've selected a preschool context of children aged 4 to 5 years and will be drawing explicitly on the early years learning framework as my guiding syllabus. This is important because the EYLF does not treat learning as subject-based, but rather as holistic and interconnected. This presentation is not simply descriptive, instead it is analytical and applied. I will demonstrate how STEAMs operates in practice through a carefully designed inquiry model. Specifically, I'll address 3 key areas. Firstly, I'll explain how STEAMs-based inquiry can be constructed in a way that reflects how young children actually learn through play, exploration, and interaction. Secondly, I'll examine how overlapping accessible elements are formed within this inquiry, which is essential in early childhood learning where learning cannot be meaningfully separated into discrete this is essential where learning can't be separated into discrete categories. And thirdly, I'll provide a detailed explanation of how assessment and evaluation occur through each component of STEAMs, with a particular emphasis on authentic, ongoing, and evidence-based assessment strategies. Ultimately, this presentation will argue that STEAMs is not simply an interdisciplinary model, but a framework that aligns closely with early childhood pedagogy and supports the development of the whole child. So first we have to begin, what is STEAMs? It is essential to clearly define this as we go through this presentation. STEAMs stands for spirituality, technology, English, arts, mathematics, and science. And what distinguishes this model from the traditional STEM or STEAM approach is the inclusion of spirituality as a core dimension of learning. In early childhood education, spirituality is not just confined to religious instruction, rather it is understood as children's sense of wonder, curiosity, belonging, identity, and connection to the world around them. This is supported by the Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority, which recognises spirituality as part of holistic development, particularly in how children form relationships with people, place, and the environment around them. From a pedagogical perspective, STEAMs aligns with constructivist learning theory, which suggests that children actively construct knowledge through their interaction and experience. Research by Fleer and Raven emphasizes that young children do not learn in isolated disciplines. Instead, they engage in integrated meaning making where multiple domains are activated simultaneously. For example, when a child interacts with a plant, they are not just engaging in science, they are observing changes over time, which is scientific thinking, describing what they see, which is language development, representing the ideas through drawing, which is artistic expression, measuring growth, which is mathematical reasoning, using tools such as cameras or magnifiers, which involves technology, and often experiencing curiosity and awe, which connects to spirituality. This demonstrates that STEAMs is not an imposed framework, but rather a way of recognizing and structuring the complexity of children's natural learning processes. Therefore, STEAM should be understood as a holistic and integrated approach rather than a collection of separate subject areas. Why the EYLF? The Early Years Learning Framework provides the most appropriate and coherent foundation for implementing a STEAMs approach in early childhood education. The EYLF is built on the understanding that learning is holistic, interconnected, and occurs through play-based experiences. Rather than organizing learning into subject-specific content, the EYLF focuses on 5 key learning outcomes that reflect the whole development of the child. These outcomes include identity, connection with the world, well-being, confident learning, and effective communication. Each of these outcomes align naturally with multiple aspects of STEAMs. For example, outcome 4, which focuses on children as confident and involved learners, strongly connects to science and mathematics through inquiry, problem solving, and investigation. Outcome 5, which focuses on communication, aligns with English, the arts, and technology through multimodal expression and meaning making. Outcome 2, which emphasizes connection with the world, strongly relates to both science and spirituality, particularly in understanding relationships with living things and the environment. Another critical feature of the EYLF is its emphasis on the planning cycle, which includes observing, assessing, planning, implementing, and evaluating. This cycle positions assessment as an ongoing, embedded process rather than something that occurs at the end of learning. This is particularly important within a STEAMS framework where learning is fluid, dynamic, and interconnected. As Siraj Blatchford argues, high-quality early childhood pedagogy involves sustained shared thinking, where educators and children co-construct knowledge through interaction. This aligns directly with a STEAMS approach, where learning emerges through inquiry and collaboration. Therefore, the EYLF not only supports STEAMS, it provides the ideal structure for its implementation. The inquiry I've designed to demonstrate this approach is how can we create a wonder garden that helps living things thrive. This inquiry has deliberately been selected because it reflects key principles of effective early childhood pedagogy. Firstly, it's hands-on and experiential. Young children learn best through active engagement with materials and environments. Secondly, it is meaningful and relevant. The concept of a garden connects directly to children's everyday experiences and provides opportunity for real-world learning. Thirdly, it encourages curiosity, questioning, and investigation, which are central to inquiry-based learning. According to Kuhlthau's model of inquiry learning, deep understanding occurs when learners actively explore questions and construct their own knowledge. This inquiry also supports place-based learning, where children develop a connection to their environment. Importantly, this inquiry allows all 6 components of STEAMS to be naturally integrated. Children can investigate plant growth through science, measure change through mathematics, communicate ideas through language, represent their thinking through the arts, use tools through technology, and experience wonder and connection through spirituality. This makes it a rich and powerful context for integrated learning. Within this single inquiry, each component of STEAMS is meaningfully embedded. Science is explored as children observe plant growth, investigate what living things need to survive, and begin to understand cause and effect. Mathematics is integrated as children measure plant height, count seeds, compare sizes, and identify patterns in growth. English is developed through discussion, questioning, storytelling, and the use of descriptive language to explain observations. The arts provides opportunities for children to represent their understanding through drawing, painting, construction, and dramatic retelling. Technology is used as children engage with tools such as tablets, cameras, and magnifying devices to document their own learning. Spirituality, lastly, emerges through children's sense of wonder, curiosity, and connection to living things, as well as their developing sense of responsibility and care. Henriksen argues that effective STEAMS education requires meaningful integration where each discipline enhances and supports the other. It's all working together. This inquiry reflects that principle, as each component of STEAMS is not taught separately, but emerges through a shared learning experience. One of the most critical concepts in early childhood education is the idea of overlapping assessment. The EYLF clearly states that learning is integrated, and therefore assessment must reflect this integration. In practice, this means that a single learning experience can provide evidence across multiple domains. For example, when a child takes a photograph of a plant, describes what they see, and measures its height, this one activity demonstrates learning across several areas, 3 to be specific. It shows technological understanding through the use of the camera, language development through verbal explanation, mathematical reasoning through measurement, and then lastly, scientific thinking through observation. At the same time, it aligns with the multiple EYLF outcomes, including confident learning and effective communication. Carr's concept of learning stories support this approach, as it focuses on documenting learning in context rather than isolating skills. Another example might involve a group of children collaboratively designing a garden layout. In this scenario, we can observe problem solving, communication, social interaction, and spatial reasoning, and lastly, creativity. This highlights that assessment in early childhood is not about categorizing learning, but about recognizing the complexity of development. Therefore, overlapping assessment is not just efficient, it is essential for accurately capturing children's learning. Assessment within a STEAMS framework must be intentional, comprehensive, and grounded in authentic practice. Each component of STEAMS can be assessed through observable behaviors and interactions. For spirituality, we look for evidence of curiosity, wonder, empathy, connection to the environment. For technology, we assess how children use tools purposefully, whether they can document their learning, and how they engage with digital and physical technologies. For English, we look at their communication skills, such as speaking, listening, vocabulary development, and the ability to express ideas clearly. For the arts, we assess creativity, representation, and the ways in which children use different media to communicate meaning. For mathematics, we observe counting, measuring, comparing, and pattern recognition. For science, we assess inquiry skills such as observing, predicting, experimenting, and explaining. Black and William emphasize that effective assessment is formative, meaning it informs teaching and supports learning in real time. This aligns with the EYLF approach, where assessment is ongoing and embedded within everyday experiences. Importantly, assessment is not about testing children, but about understanding their development and supporting their learning journey. To effectively assess learning within a STEAMS framework, educators must use a range of tools and strategies. These include anecdotal observations recorded during play, learning stories that capture significant moments of development, and photographic or video evidence that documents engagement. Work samples such as drawings or constructions provide insight into children's thinking and understanding. Conversations with children allow educators to explore their reasoning and perspectives. Family input also plays an important role as it provides additional context that supports a holistic understanding of the child. McAfee argues that high-quality assessment must draw on multiple sources of evidence to ensure both accuracy and depth. By using a range of tools, educators can create a comprehensive picture of children's learning. Evaluation focuses on the effectiveness of teaching and learning design. While assessment examines children's development, evaluation examines the quality of the learning experience. Educators must reflect on questions such as, was the inquiry engaging? Did it support meaningful learning? Were all children included? And what could be improved? Sean describes this as a reflective practice where educators continuously improve through reflection on action. Evaluation ensures that teaching remains responsive and aligned with children's needs. Key takeaways. In conclusion, a STEAMS approach provides a powerful framework for integrated early childhood learning. Through a single inquiry, children engage in multiple domains simultaneously, reflecting the holistic nature of development. Assessment becomes authentic and meaningful, capturing the complexity of learning. Evaluation ensures that teaching practices continue to improve, and ultimately, STEAM supports not just academic development, but the growth of the whole child. Thank you for listening.